Check, check. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this documentary episode where we will take you on a journey to explore the fascinating topic that will challenge your perceptions and broaden your horizons. Through this documentary, we will delve deep into the subject matter, uncovering hidden truths, shedding light on obscure facts, and providing an in-depth analysis of issues at hand. My name is Gregory Bartholomew LeBoog, and I've devoted my life to finding out the truth behind history's big events. Today, we're looking at the Renaissance and how capitalism impacted this era of fancy art, literature, and all-around fancy living.
Welcome, friends. Today we will be discussing the fascinating topic of the Renaissance. Now, like a lot of people know, the Renaissance refers to a period in European history spanning from 14 AD to 1750 AD. That was a transition from the Middle Ages into an age of modernization and evolution. Some major developments of the Renaissance include astronomy, humanist philosophy, the printing press, vernacular language in writing, painting and sculpture technique, world exploration, and, in the late Renaissance, Shakespeare's own works, all of which are widely seen and used throughout the modern world. The Catholic Church was something you did not want to argue with, for they were too great a power. Among many things, trade was greatly influenced by the Catholic Church. The Church preached certain ways of maintaining the economy to the people. This was one of their fundamental concepts. All economic life should be shaped by moral principles, support the family, and serve the common good. As you can see, they were very set on their ways of ruling. By choosing to abide by this way of thinking, the church greatly benefited from their system of trade. Whatever they thought a necessity, or forever holy, or morally upright, was what was traded and bought. Ah, yes, the Medici family.
Hello.
The true Kardashians of their time. They were the masters of Florence, the monopolizers of the Italian world. Being both wool merchants and bankers made their business very profitable, and the family became extremely wealthy. The Medici family began to rule over the city of Florence throughout the Renaissance. They had a major influence on the growth of the Italian Renaissance through their patronage of the arts and humanism. The Medici family was one of the most powerful and influential groups in European history, just like the Kardashians. Yeah, Cosimo and Lorenzo, they were the real first Kim and Kylie. Anyway, they innovated new banking systems and laid the groundwork to make Florence a cultural hotspot.
Hold on. Wow. Okay. During the Age of Exploration, the European nations began exploring the world. They discovered new routes to India, much of the Far East, and the Americas. The necessities and wealth on the trade route instigated most of the exploration and colonization. The scientific revolution, it was filled with new teachings such as abstract reasoning, quantitative thought, and understanding of how nature works, and the view of nature as a machine, deductive and inductive reasoning, and the development of an experimental scientific method. The Renaissance was the discovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. During the whole 400-year time period, the innovations happening were the discovery of new land, inventions, and customs of understanding and teaching. The development of capitalism was led by the growth of the English cloth industry during the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. The feature that distinguished capitalism from previous systems was the use of accumulated capital to enlarge productive capacity rather than to invest in economically unproductive enterprises, such as pyramids and cathedrals. Modern capitalism emerged as a social system in Western Europe in the first half of the 19th century. Four features distinguished the Western European capitalist societies. On an economic level, they were the first in which economic activities were organized via market exchange. On a political level, they were based on notions of citizenship and the rule of law. On a social level, these societies had to a great extent abandoned formal structures of hierarchy based on birthright. Lastly, in ideas and belief systems, Western European societies were increasingly secularized. Is that right?
Secularize.
Okay. Were increasingly secularized and grounded in a modern scientific outlook.
So, what are patronage arts? What do they contribute?
Well, first, we need to go over what patronage arts were. During the Renaissance, a new form of art market was invented. We often focus on the artist who made the work. In the Renaissance, it was the patron, the person or group of people paying for the image, who was considered the primary force behind each piece of art. We often forget that for most of history, artists did not simply create art for art's sake. Information about patrons provides a window into the complex processes involved in the production of art and architecture during the Renaissance. Patrons often dictated the cost, materials, size, location, and subject matters of art. Yeah, you heard me right. The person paying for the image got to decide how much to pay. But that's not the point. As long as the patron could pay the fee that they decided, and the price of the materials, they could ask for anything. Literally anything they could think up, and it could be made. That's when a new sort of thing showed up. Behold, paper money. When art became something to purchase, donkeys and saffron were kind of discarded as a means of currency. They were still used in certain circumstances in some parts of the world, but, paper money had its big break in the Renaissance. It gained popularity throughout the Renaissance, and by the 17th and 18th centuries, was one of the main source of commerce in most Western countries. Okay, now let's talk about the Age of Exploration. It was a huge boom in travel and discovery and exploitation of natives who were just kind of minding their own business. But we can ignore that for surely. It won't lead to anything bad. War and Revolution! The big dogs of this era were Christopher Columbus, the first to discover the Americas. Not really, the Vikings kind of beat everyone to it. John Cabot, who discovered a couple of islands off the coast of the Americas, and his voyages to North America helped lay the foundation for Britain's claim in Canada a little bit later. There was Vasco da Gama, who discovered a sea route to India, which helped international trade routes, including the spice trade, which opened a new form of globalization where everyone could trade with anyone. There was Amerigo Vespucci, who discovered the Amazon River and traversed much of South Africa. There was Ferdinand Magellan, who discovered what is now known as the Strait of Magellan, and became the first European to cross the Pacific Ocean. And Sir Francis Drake, who discovered that Tierra del Fuego, the land south of the Magellan Strait, was not another continent, as Europeans believed at that time, but rather just a cluster of islands, helping people to learn that you could go down around South America and just go straight onto the Indies, because the Panama Canal did not let you go through Central America. The unfortunate thing is that the Cape Horn route, which is the part where you go under South America, is extremely dangerous. It's not helpful. This era of exploring opened up something called colonial mercantilism. Colonial mercantilism was the idea that a country's colonies would make stuff, sell it off, and the money would go to the mother country. Unfortunately, this often led to pirates and mercenaries coming and taking all the cargo, selling it for their own, and, sometimes killing sailors. Riffraff, they don't matter. Many expeditions, lots of troop deployment, and a copious amount of native subjugation later, business was booming. Colonial mercantilism also helped with diversification. It brought new products and methods, helping markets to thrive. And what else did colonial mercantilism help thrive? Slave trade! An influx of foreign natives were shipped off and forced to work. There were three Asians when it came to slavery: subjugation, dehumanization, and commodification. Dehumanization and subjugation are pretty much what they sound like. But what is commodification? It's when humans become a commodity and are given a market price. It was a terrible part of history, but it did shape the world today. So why was the Renaissance a catalyst for exploration? The Renaissance was a time of discovery and rationalism in the scientific field as well. One key advance was in cartography, the art and science of map-making. In the early 1400s, an Italian scholar translated an ancient book called Guide to Geography from Greek to Latin. The book was written by the thinker Ptolemy in the 2nd century CE. Printed copies of his book inspired new interest in cartography. European map makers used Ptolemy's works to create new, more accurate maps. Translation: people now knew where they were going. Kind of helps when you're trying to get from one place to the next. Also, there was an advancement in shipbuilding. So, ships could be used easier and were safer and lasted longer, which also helps just a little for long voyages. That's really all from me, unless Robert has something to say. Okay, he's being obstinate today, but that's it for me.
The merchant class rose to prominence, and the people realized that success was not, in fact, determined by birth, but the ability to make profit. The Renaissance was a time of meritocracy, where talent and hard work were rewarded. But let's be real, if you weren't already rich, it became increasingly difficult to get rich. But hey, at least you could look at all the fancy things and pretend. Now, the pursuit of individualism and human potential also led to excess. Wealthy people wanted to show off their riches, so they commissioned paintings, sculptures, and architecture that were grandiose and over the top. In fact, some of the art from this time could be considered downright ridiculous by today's standards. But let us not forget the downsides of capitalism. As wealth and power became concentrated in the hands of the few, inequality and exploitation became widespread. The working class often toiled away in terrible conditions while the rich got richer and threw fancy parties. And if you think traffic is bad now, imagine trying to navigate the streets of Venice during the Renaissance with everyone trying to show off their fancy carriages and outfits. So, what can we learn from the Renaissance and capitalism? Well, first off, maybe don't paint your genitals to look like weapons. Isn't that right? Classic. Secondly, we need to be mindful of the potential for exploitation and inequality, and work towards creating a more just and equitable society. The impact of capitalism on the Renaissance was complex and multifaceted. It fueled innovation, creativity, and the rise of the merchant class, while also challenging traditional notions of authority and hierarchy. But it also led to inequality and exploitation, raising important ethical questions that we continue to grapple with today. Well, one of the most famous examples of Renaissance excess is actually the portrait of King Henry VIII. Robert, what can you tell us about King Henry VIII? Well, guys, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this video. Robert, do you have anything to say to the crowd before they leave? Classic Robert. Anyway, that's all for now. Good night.
I'm the leader. I'll say when it's the end. It's the end.